Week 3 delivered like the previous 2 weeks, as we had a number of crazy games all across college football. As I'll be doing every week during the season, here is my top 25 ballot after week 3 of the college football season. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. I'll be posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. Another week, another dominating Georgia victory. They took care of South Carolina 48-7. It honestly should have been a shutout, but the Gamecocks scored a touchdown with less than a minute remaining to exit the field with at least some dignity. This Bulldogs team somehow looks better than they did last year. The defense looks just as good, while the offense looks like it's taking things up a notch. Stetson Bennett was great once again, as he totaled 300 yards with 3 touchdowns. I was shocked when I looked at the box score and saw that South Carolina somehow managed to get 300 yards. I think a lot of it was in garbage time, because when I was watching this game, it seemed like the Georgia defense wasn't allowing anything. Alabama took care of business, taking down UL Monroe 63-7. Bryce Young had 250 yards with 3 touchdowns, but did have 2 interceptions. 3 different players rushed in a touchdown as they finished with just under 300 yards for the game. The Tide had quite the day in the return game as they returned 8 punts for 260 yards with 2 touchdowns. Ohio State won in a game with Toledo in which defense was optional as they beat them 77-21. CJ Stroud had only 5 incompletions as he threw for 370 yards with 5 passing touchdowns. As a team, the Buckeyes rushed for just under 300 yards. 5 different players had a rushing touchdown for Ohio State. The offense reminded us once again why they're the best offense in the entire nation. The Wolverines had a televised scrimmage as they took down UConn 59-0. JJ McCarthy completed 15 of 18 passes for 215 yards. 6 other players from Michigan attempted a pass in this game. I don't know if there's ever been a team with 7 different players finish with a completion, and I doubt it's happened anytime recently. Blake Corum rushed for only 70 yards, but he had 5 rushing touchdowns. The defense held UConn to only 6 first downs with 110 total yards. The Huskies only had 24 yards through the air. Like I mentioned, it was very nice of ABC to broadcast a scrimmage. There's something I have to admit, and I'm not proud of this, but I actually thought that for some reason, Nebraska would hang around with Oklahoma. I thought the firing of Scott Frost would motivate this team. Turns out, I was wrong, as Oklahoma straight up embarrassed them. The Sooners could have won by 75 points if they chose to. This offense was unstoppable all game, and they really haven't skipped a beat with Lincoln Riley gone. My biggest takeaway from this game, though, was the Sooners' defense. Outside of Nebraska's first drive, Oklahoma shut everything down the rest of the way. USC was in control for most of the game as they took down Fresno State by nearly 30 points. This offense continues to thrive as they've scored 40-plus points in 3 straight games to start the season, which is the first time they've done this since 2005. Over the last 2 seasons, they scored 40 points in only 3 games. Caleb Williams threw for 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns while adding 2 touchdowns on the ground. Austin Jones and Travis Dye each rushed for 100-plus yards and each had a rushing touchdown. The defense did a great job in holding Fresno State to only 17 points, as I thought they'd score at least 30. I wasn't sold on this USC team entering the season, but they're winning me over more and more each week. Things got a little interesting in the 4th quarter for Clemson as they led by only 2 scores, but they pulled away and beat Louisiana Tech by 28. DJ Uiagalelei was underwhelming as he completed just over 50% of his passes. He did have 2 touchdowns, but the Tigers' rushing game is what carried the offense. As a team, they rushed for 280 yards on 7 yards a carry. They had 4 rushing touchdowns, with Will Shipley leading the way with 2 of them. He also had a career-high 140 yards on the ground. The defense was great through the first 3 quarters, but they let Louisiana Tech have whatever they wanted in the 4th quarter. But with the huge lead they had, I don't really blame them for taking it down a notch. The Cowboys got to play Arkansas Pine Bluff. As expected, they annihilated them 63-7. Spencer Sanders had only 3 incompletions as he threw for 250 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. Oklahoma State will get their first test in their next game as they play Baylor. Kentucky picked up an easy win, defeating Youngstown State 31-0. Will Levis threw for 400 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. The defense allowed only 9 first downs and under 200 yards of total offense. The win was expected, but the superb start to the season continues for the Wildcats. Utah took care care of business against San Diego State as they defeated them by 28. Cameron Rising had 4 touchdown passes as Tavion Thomas led the team in rushing yards and had a rushing touchdown. For the game, the Utes allowed only 170 total yards, with only 60 yards coming through the air. Utah has bounced back nicely after their tough loss to Florida in Week 1. Tennessee had their scrimmage with Akron as they defeated them 63-6. The offense did everything you'd expect as they totaled nearly 700 yards for the game. The Vols are another team in the SEC that have started the season 3-0 and are climbing in the rankings. Things weren't looking good through the first 3 quarters for Arkansas, but they pulled through to take down Missouri State 38-27. They trailed by a touchdown entering the 4th quarter, but outscored the Bears 21-3 in the 4th. KJ Jefferson had over 400 yards of offense with 3 touchdowns for the game. Raheem Sanders had a game on the ground as he rushed for 170 yards with the score. It was a little worrisome for the Razorbacks, considering this is a team that they should have put away with ease. Hopefully this was just a wake-up call as they begin a pretty rough part of their schedule. The Wolfpack couldn't ever really put away Texas Tech, but it was still an impressive victory over an undefeated team. NC State had some key turnovers that allowed them to have a comfortable lead, but offensively, they just couldn't get anything going. Devin Leary only threw for 120 yards and didn't have a touchdown. On the ground, the Wolfpack averaged only 3 yards a carry. Had Texas Tech played a cleaner game, the Wolfpack would have really been on upset watch, but at the end of the day, a win is a win. Ole Miss had a fairly easy game as they beat Georgia Tech by 42 points. All of their scoring came on the ground as they had 6 rushing touchdowns. They rushed for over 300 yards for the game. Zach Evans led the way with 140 yards with 2 scores, while Quinshon Judkins rushed for 100 yards with 2 touchdowns as well. Ole Miss is now 3-0 on the season. They're likely going to go 4-0 after their win next week before they start conference play. Penn State went into Auburn and completely dominated the game as they won by 30 points. All of their touchdowns came on the ground as they rushed for 5 with 250 yards. Nicholas Singleton led the way with 125 yards on only 10 carries, while also adding 2 rushing touchdowns. Katron Allen also added 2 rushing touchdowns as well. Auburn actually had a pretty solid day offensively as they had more first downs than Penn State and had over 400 yards of total offense, but the Nittany Lions forced 4 turnovers, which proved to be the difference maker in the game. Oregon picked up their best win of the season as they dominated BYU from start to finish, beating them by 21. It almost made me forget what happened to them in Week 1. Bo Nix had one of the best games of his career as he completed 13 of 18 passes for 225 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. He also rushed for 35 yards with 3 rushing touchdowns. I've seen a number of games from Bo Nix over the years, and this was seriously the best he's ever looked in my opinion. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but he looks like a Heisman caliber quarterback out there. If Oregon can get this Bo Nix the rest of the season, they might have a shot of climbing back into the top 10. The Aggies didn't get anything going on offense, but their defense stepped up big time in their 8-point win over Miami. Max Johnson got the start for A&M, completing only 10 of 20 passes for 140 yards. He did have a passing touchdown, which proved to be huge. For the game, the Aggies averaged less than 4 yards a carry. Like I mentioned, it was the defense that won the game for them. They didn't allow a touchdown while holding the Hurricanes' offense in check all night. I still don't think the Aggies will go far this season just because of how bad their offense looks, but their defense is legit and it'll keep them in games. Washington moved to 3-0 on the season after their huge victory over number 11 Michigan State. The game was put out of reach in the first half after the Huskies led by 21. Michael Penix Jr. was fantastic as he threw for 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. It was one of the best games of his collegiate career. Washington's defense held Michigan State's running game in check as the Spartans rushed for only 42 yards on 29 carries. It's been some time since we've seen Washington as a contender in the Pac-12, but maybe this season is finally the time they turn things around. The Bears took care of business against Texas State as they picked up the 35-point victory. The offense rushed for 300 yards. On defense, they allowed only 270 yards. Yeah, that's really it for this one. A nice bounce-back victory for Baylor. Wake Forest was lucky to escape with a victory as they defeated Liberty by only 1 point. The Flames went for 2 with a minute left, but came up just short. The Demon Deacons had a battle all game, but ultimately came out with the victory. Sam Hartman threw for over 300 yards with 3 touchdowns, but had 2 interceptions. He was also the leading rusher with only 11 yards on the ground. As a team, Wake Forest rushed for 21 yards on 26 carries. This keeps Wake Forest undefeated as they have a huge game next weekend as they host Clemson. It looked like Texas was going to be on upset watch, but they completely flipped things around to take down UTSA by 21. After going down by 10 points, Texas outscored the Roadrunners 34-3 the rest of the way. Bijan Robinson led the offense as he rushed for 180 yards on 9 yards a carry with 3 rushing touchdowns. Watching this game, UTSA really gave it away as they had a number of meltdowns throughout the second half, but Texas took advantage and capitalized. The Hurricanes offense didn't make the trip to College Station as they didn't score a touchdown in their loss to Texas A&M. Their defense kept them in the game as they held the Aggies to only 17 points, but the offense did absolutely nothing. Tyler Van Dyke completed 50% of his passes and averaged only 5 yards per completion. They did have 175 yards on the ground, but they just couldn't get the big run they needed all night. This would have been quite the statement game for Miami, but they just didn't have enough offense to pull it off. After a thrilling overtime victory last week, BYU got cooked by Bo Nix as they fell to Oregon by 21. The Cougars were hanging around early, but Bo Nix delivered one of the best games of his career. I still think BYU is a really good team that'll be back towards the top 10 at some point this season, but they just ran into the GOAT that is Bo Nix. Michigan State had a great second half, but it was their first half that screwed them over as they fell to Washington. They were outscored 29-8 in the first half, and they just ran out of time trying to catch up. Peyton Thorne had a solid game, but it was the rushing attack that was non-existent for the Spartans. On 29 carries, the team only had 42 yards. Jalen Berger had 27 yards on 13 carries. The defense also allowed over 500 yards to the Huskies offense. After 2 straight great games from the defense, they couldn't stop a community college in this game. After hosting game day, Appalachian State had one of the craziest finishes you'll see all year. Down to their final play, Chase Bryce connected with Christian Horn for the game-winning Hail Mary. It was a back-and-forth game all day, but App State delivered on the final play when it mattered most. The Mountaineers have been very impressive to start the 2022 campaign. They've picked up 2 crazy victories in a row, with their lone loss on the season being in a game in which they scored 60 points. We're actually going to have 26 teams this week because I seriously don't know when this team cracked the top 25 last. It's the Kansas Jayhawks, who are now 3-0 on the season. After an impressive start to the season, they went into Houston as a 10-point underdog and picked up the 18-point victory. Jalen Daniels is a name you need to start remembering as he's building an early season Heisman case. He threw for 150 yards with 3 passing touchdowns while leading Kansas with 120 yards on the ground with 2 rushing touchdowns. I don't know what the hell is going on with the Jayhawks this year, but this is uncharted territory with them being 3-0. Well, there's my top 26 after week 3. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the rankings. Was there a team I had ranked too high, or a team that was ranked too low, or was there a team not even on this list that should have been on here? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'll be posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.